story begins with a decaying boy about to die. Right in front of him was a door that could completely change his life. He was finally reaching for the handle, but two people tried to stop him from opening it, saying that it was better to kill him once and for all. Even when he was hit, he didn't stop. Despite all the pain, he continued to force the door, determined not to miss this opportunity like the first time. At that moment, he thought he wouldn't make the same mistake. That door was his now, and he would do anything to get through it. So he went in, even if he was dragging his feet. He was determined that, even if he died there, he wouldn't leave that door to anyone. He needed to recover everything that had once been destined for him. It was then that he remembered a moment from his past. At the time, he was watching a television report about Japan's first gold medalist, Hirosaka Renji, who was giving a special interview. Next to him was 15-year-old Ariaki Subaru, who was excitedly talking to his brother, Ariaki Taiga, about how incredible it was to see Renji. However, Taiga responded coolly, asking him not to talk to him like that, making it clear that they were not blood brothers. He said that they shouldn't behave like real brothers. On the television, the news was reporting an incident involving the release of an otherworldly door that had taken place the previous day. Because of a delay in discovering this door, an empty house ended up being the scene of a catastrophe, which resulted in the deaths of 16 people. The victims were attacked by creatures from the underworld who escaped through the open door. Renji explained that, as everyone knew, these creatures were immune to any kind of military weapon, and that they were sealed on the other side of the door. The only way to stop them crossing into the human world was through the players. These players were people chosen by the Door of Trials, who had to enter the other world and defeat the creatures before time ran out. In the case of that incident, the door's timer reached 0. It opened and released a ferocious creature. Although Renji had defeated the gigantic creature with a single blow, he claimed that he had been unable to prevent the door from opening, and as a result, many were sacrificed. The interviewer then commented that if he hadn't been there, the number of victims would have been even higher. She recalled that all of society praised the players as heroes, people who protected the world by putting their own lives at risk. Renji then urged anyone who found a door to another world to immediately inform the authorities, as gamers were the only ones who could protect humanity from these threats. At that moment, Subaru was amazed, thinking how incredible the players were. They were true heroes, ready to risk everything to protect others. Then the story explained that it all began 5 years earlier, when the first door to another world suddenly appeared. At that time, people despaired when they realized that military weapons were completely useless against the creatures of the underworld. The only hope lay with the chosen ones, those who managed to pass through the Door of Trials that appeared along with the door to the other world. These chosen ones came to be called players. The doors were classified as gold, silver, and bronze. Among them, the gold door was the most powerful, granting players extraordinary combat abilities. Whoever managed to conquer a golden door received status, honor, and a huge reward. The players became figures admired and respected by all of humanity. During the interview, the reporter asked Renji what kind of person could be chosen as a player. He replied that when they were inside the Door of Trials, they learned that purity of soul was the factor that chose the strongest. But when he heard this, Taiga scoffed, saying that this purity of soul thing was complete nonsense, since there was nothing pure about players. As far as he was concerned, it was nothing more than idle chatter. It was at that moment that, right before Subaru's eyes, a golden door appeared. It was the first time he had seen a door appear so close to him. Subaru knew that if he entered that door, he could become someone like Renji. However, before he could even touch the handle, Taiga pushed him away, stepping in front of him. Even though he apologized, he made it clear that the opportunity was now his, and without a second thought, he walked through the golden door, stealing what should have been Subaru's. 3 years had passed. Now 18, Ariaki Subaru was tied up, being cruelly stoned. People were aiming directly at his head, as if it were a game, where whoever hit the best would win the most points. While he was being humiliated, someone came up and asked if they were bothering Subaru again. At that moment, Ariaki Taiga, his younger brother, appeared. Subaru, looking at him, remembered that day when Taiga stole his golden door. Since then, Taiga has survived the ordeal and become the youngest gold player in all of Japan. Taiga looked at Subaru with contempt and called him a damn insect. He said it was pathetic to see how he was being mistreated by 3 bronze-ranked players in such a humiliating way. He said he was disgusted to have a younger brother like him, and that, fortunately, they weren't related by blood. Then Taiga asked one of the boys for a stone, held it in his hand, and activated his special ability, accumulating energy. His arm turned golden, glowing brightly, and everyone around was amazed by that power. Taiga's ability was so strong that it could rival even the legendary golden sword of Hirosaka Renji himself. In the face of that power, Subaru was terrified, trembling with fear. When Taiga threw the stone, it looked like a meteor crossing the sky. Luckily, he missed his target, because if he had, Subaru would have died on the spot. Even so, the impact was so absurd that the clouds disappeared from the sky, and Subaru, overcome with fear, ended up urinating in his pants. Taiga then said that he didn't care what they did to Subaru, that it wasn't his problem. Once again, Subaru was left there, to be tortured, humiliated, and trampled on as usual. People passed by, laughing at him, taking photos and recording videos, saying that this was the boy who was always getting beaten up by the players. They commented that he was so pathetic, completely different from his younger brother, and that if we're in his shoes, they would have taken their own lives a long time ago. That same evening, in an extremely luxurious house, the television was broadcasting a report that doors to another world had been opened in the cities of Koto, Suginami, and Shinagawa. Traffic restrictions had been lifted, and as usual, Ariake Taiga was manning several of these doors. At that moment, his parents were celebrating with pride. Taiga's mother said what a wonderful son he was, that even though he was only a student, he was already helping his parents so much, just as she expected from someone who carried her blood. She was happy to have put him out into the world, unlike that other useless boy who was only her husband's child. His father added that Subaru was a complete failure. Meanwhile, Subaru was in his tiny house, practically a miserable hut next to the mansion, where Taiga and his parents lived. From inside the big house, Taiga complained that his water bottle was empty. She said that there was no other way, and that she would have to send someone to fetch more. Then she shouted for Subaru, demanding that he go and buy some water, and reminded him not to buy the wrong brand. Subaru, trying to resist, replied that he was studying at the moment, but Taiga laughed and said that even if he studied, it would be useless. He said that Subaru would never be anything more than a pet, locked away forever in his insect cage. Then he crumpled up some money and threw it in his face. After buying the water while walking alone, Subaru wondered what Taiga meant by forever. He wondered if he would really spend the rest of his life in that cage, living like an insect, suffering in the scorching heat of summer, the biting cold of winter, and being constantly mistreated by his parents, who treated him as worthless. He wondered if this was his destiny, to spend his whole life being the boy who buys water for others, with no value whatsoever. He came to the conclusion that he didn't want to live like this anymore. He wondered why always him. He thought that if he could start again, he would never have left that golden door to anyone. At that moment, he felt that it was better to die than to continue that miserable life. But as if life wanted to prove that it could get worse, some school bullies appeared on the path, saying goodnight in a debauched way and calling him a bug. They pretended to be surprised to find him there and commented that they were very tired after destroying a door from another world. One of them looked at Sawatari, who had a bruised face, full of burns and wounds from fighting the monster. They said that being a bronze rank was difficult, and even so, they invited Subaru to go with them, just to relax. Realizing that it was a trap, Subaru immediately ran out, trying to escape. But Sawatari, even though he was wounded, warned him that he wouldn't go to the hospital until he had finished what he wanted, which was to torture and kill that insect. He said he didn't even need to hold back. After all, they had permission from his own brother, Taiga. As he ran desperately, Subaru was followed by the three players. He soon took the first blow, which tore his arm. Those maniacs laughed, surrounding him like hungry hyenas. Subaru wondered if they were really planning to kill him. As much as he thought he didn't deserve to live, he realized deep down in his heart that he didn't want to die. When they finally reached him, Sawatari threw him into an alley, kicked him to the ground like a piece of garbage. And once again, Subaru found himself being lynched, trampled, humiliated, and treated like an insect, just like he always was. Subaru thought he would finally die. People around him said he was so weak it wasn't even funny. Sawatari said it was to kill him, so he summoned his skill called Red Rose, which was a flaming sphere. At that moment, Sawatari himself said it was over for that damned parasite. But suddenly, something strange began to form in front of one of the bullies, and before he knew it, he was torn in half. What caused this was a huge bronze door that appeared out of nowhere. Everyone was shocked, wondering where that door had come from and why a door of trial was there. Subaru himself wondered if it really was a bronze door, but unexpectedly, the door began to crack. First it turned into a silver door. Then it changed back into a gold door. And right in front of Subaru, it transformed once again, now becoming a rainbow door. Subaru had never seen a rainbow door before. Sawatari himself was confused and wondered if this color was more powerful than gold. Meanwhile, Subaru thought that maybe this was his chance to start his life over from scratch. The bullies jeered, saying that the door and that he was about to open the handle. They made it clear that they wanted to kill him before he could do it. Subaru knew that that door had appeared in front of him for the second time and that he couldn't make the same mistake. Even though he'd been hit, even though he remembered everything he'd suffered, the humiliations and the times he'd been called a damn insect, he decided that this time he wouldn't let it go. While the others tried to stop him, he took a firm hold of the handle and walked it through the door. He thought that even if he died, he wouldn't hand that door over to anyone. He needed to get back everything they had taken from him: strength, status, honor, and money. Everything that was rightfully his. As soon as he crossed, the system welcomed him, and a strange creature appeared before him, informing him that the rainbow race would now begin. It was then that his real story began. The story continues. The monster touched the head of Subaru, then the system suddenly updating. It's repairing Subaru's damaged body. His nearsightedness was corrected. His legs, which had previously been broken, were regenerated. His heart and lungs were revived. Subaru opened his eyes and breathed again. As soon as he took his first breath after coming back to life, he was confronted by this strange creature. He was startled and immediately ran, but the creature just walked away in silence without reacting. Looking around, Subaru began to remember everything that had happened. He knew that he was now inside that creature was surely the master of that door. He remembered an interview he had seen with the legendary Hirosaka. In the interview, the reporter asked what happened inside a trial door, and Hirosaka explained that, in his case, it looked like a medieval castle with a gold surface. It was probably the place of residence of the door's owner. He also explained that behind each trial door, there is a leader, and to become a player, you have to be recognized by that leader. The aim of the trial is to surpass him. Subaru realized that the being in front of him was the owner of the rainbow door. He wondered what kind of test this was. He remembered that in Hirosaka's test, he had to face a golden knight in a sword duel, and after winning, he was recognized and received his power. Even in the interview, Hirosaka invoked his famous golden sword to show the result of the trial. The Subaru understood that the aim of the test was simple: to touch the owner of the door. That was enough. However, looking at the creature that looked more like a monster with a body glowing in rainbows, he realized that it wasn't going to be easy. The creature was clearly impatient, sighing, and then asked how much longer Subaru would be standing there. He said that his body had fully recovered, and now it seemed that it was his brain that was broken. The Subaru replied that he was fine, and the beast, out of patience, told him to hurry up. He said that this was the test. If he can touch it with a single blow, it will grant him its power. It's as simple as that. Subaru, a little lost, asked who exactly he was. The creature replied that there are only 3 types of door in the world: gold, silver, and bronze. He had never heard of a rainbow door. But then he wondered what the point of this silly piece of information was. Suddenly, the creature summoned an absurd blast of energy that almost split Subaru in half and completely destroyed the room and everything in it. Subaru realized at that moment that touching that being would be practically impossible. But the beast, already tired, told him to hurry up because he wanted to get it over with and go to sleep. Subaru was completely shaking with fear. He even tried to accept the situation, but his legs were so weak that he couldn't even stand up. The creature, curious, asked what was going on and also wondered why they had chosen someone like Subaru for this. Despite saying that technically it couldn't help, the creature decided to give him a present. It threw him a red sword, followed by a veritable shower of weapons in the same color. Subaru was terrified, but realized that none of those weapons fell on him. In fact, he was supposed to choose one. The beast explained that if Subaru was so afraid of touching him, he could use any of those weapons. And if he couldn't, all he had to do was turn right, go through the door, and go home. However, if he chose the door, it would mean giving up the race. At that moment, Subaru wondered whether he should really touch that absurdly powerful creature or simply go back to his previous life. Facing his own past, Subaru decided to get up. The creature asked if he was really determined, and Subaru, trembling, started walking toward the door. The rainbow creature then said it was impressed. It realized that Subaru opened that door not by chance, but because deep down he wanted power. Subaru realized that this was true, even though he was completely terrified. After all, everyone who seeks power ends up feeling that fear. The creature looked at him and said that after all, he was just an insect. These words reminded Subaru of everything he had experienced. He remembered when he was called an insect by his own brother, who stole all his power. He remembered all the people who had tried to kill him and how all his life he had been treated like nothing. The rainbow beast said that, as far as he was concerned, it didn't matter if Subaru wanted to live like a miserable wretch. It wasn't his problem. However, he warned him that he would have to bear the consequences of his choices. He could grow old like an insect, but it would be his responsibility. At that moment, Subaru, full of rage, slammed the door and wondered what was wrong with it. He wondered what the fuck it was. He said that all powerful people are arrogant. They always think they can do whatever they want just because they have power. They even think it's normal to call other people insects. The beast replied that of course that was normal, but Subaru, holding back his tears and his pain, said that he didn't want to waste any more time. He said that it hurt. It hurt to be treated like this. It hurt to be ignored. It hurt not to be seen as a human being. He asked why nobody understood him in this fucking life. The creature then asked if the insect had gotten angry. Filled with hatred, Subaru told the monster to shut up and attacked it. Even the creature was confused by this reaction. Subaru shouted that the creature had better hurry up and hand over that power, so he punched it straight in the face. The creature defended itself, and a rainbow barrier appeared in front of it, blocking the blow. Subaru wondered if it even counted as an attack, but to his surprise, the rainbow beast was impressed. He said that the blow was incredible, wonderful, and that he could feel the extreme hatred in Subaru's fist. And yes, it confirmed that he wasn't wrong after all. He never was. The creature finally said yes. Subaru had succeeded. From that moment on, he would receive the power he so desperately sought. Then the rainbow creature opened its mouth and bit Subaru's shoulder, making him scream in pain. A red aura began to emanate from his body, and Subaru, in the midst of his suffering, wondered if he was going to die right then and there. He had promised to give him power, but was he going to kill him first? Seized by despair, Subaru bit back. He decided that if he was going to die, he would rip that power out himself. The creature was completely surprised and said that it had never seen anyone as interesting as him. And for that very reason, he decided to offer an extra service. Soon that red aura began to transform into a rainbow aura. The pain became so intense that Subaru simply collapsed to the ground, paralyzed. The system then announced that he had passed the test. His body was being reconfigured, and he was no longer just an ordinary player. Before disappearing, the creature wished Subaru good luck. It revealed that its name was Vanquish, and that it found Subaru extremely interesting. As soon as Vanquish disappeared, the system confirmed that the ordeal was over. From that moment on, Araki Subaru officially became a level 1 player. But more than that, he was now a progenitor vampire, inheriting the supreme skill called Vanquish. When he woke up, the name of this skill echoed in his mind. The system reported that he had acquired the Blood Model skill, along with a bonus skill called Rainbow. He also gained 3 additional skills: Blood Usurper, Those Who Hate Glory, and Those Who Walk Under the Sun. While all this was going on, the door to the trials began to disappear. Subaru had 30 seconds to get out of there, as the ground was literally collapsing. But to his misfortune, his body still couldn't move, so he ended up falling into the abyss as the door shattered. Outside, the bully who was watching saw the door break down and commented that this meant Subaru had failed the test. Sawatari, mocking, said that after all that he had still failed. However, before they could celebrate, a rainbow-shaped interdimensional crack appeared in midair. From within it, Subaru appeared, completely whole. As soon as Subaru came out of the interdimensional crack, the people around him were shocked. They commented that he was back, but completely finished. Sawatari, confused, wondered if he had really become a player. And there was Subaru, his eyes now completely cured of myopia. And of course, although it wasn't a very important detail, his eyes were glowing with the colors of a rainbow, which was something to take note of at the time. Sawatari, not understanding, asked how he had managed to become a player. That's when Subaru realized it was true. Now he was indeed a player. He had received the power of Vanquish. The moment Sawatari tried to attack him, Subaru managed to dodge with absurd speed, something he would never have managed before. Even so, he asked him to stop. Sawatari, annoyed, asked if he had stolen his door, but Subaru thought that, obviously not. That door had been his from the start. Sawatari tried to attack again, and although Subaru was still afraid, his new eyes allowed him to see his enemy's every move, as if everything was in slow motion. Each blow of the katana came in a clear, smooth trajectory, as if the world had slowed down around him. It was then that Subaru realized that he could actually see. He also noticed that even though Sawatari was a gamer, and therefore faster than a normal person, he was still able to follow every movement perfectly. He dodged every attack as if it were natural, and the other bully watching was completely impressed. Meanwhile, Sawatari was getting angrier and angrier. Subaru thought he could finally dodge. So he grabbed Sawatari's sword-wielding hand and asked him once again to stop. Only Sawatari realized that, despite everything, Subaru was still shaking. Filled with hatred, Sawatari screamed, calling Subaru a bastard, and asked him if he had any idea whose arm he was holding. At that moment, Subaru was terrified again. Sawatari knew that even with power, he was still terrified. Taking advantage of this, he landed a brutal knee right to Subaru's stomach. Then he tried to throw a punch, but Subaru managed to dodge it with great effort. Even so, Sawatari landed another blow. However, it was at that moment that Subaru realized something strange. The blow simply didn't hurt. The system then appeared in his vision, informing him that his vitality was working properly. His HP was 155 out of 173, and his mana was 131. The system also explained that if his HP reached 0, he would be unable to move. So he had to fight with everything he had. Subaru wondered if this was some kind of tutorial. He realized that this was how a player saw the world. He could see the trajectory of the attacks, the distance, the statuses, the map, everything in real time. And maybe that's why that blow just now hadn't hurt a bit. Now it was clear to him. Yes, he was a gambler. Meanwhile, Sawatari was starting to get desperate, and the other bully even more so. His friend even commented that Subaru could probably already see the status menu, but Sawatari, completely out of control, told him to shut up. He said that never ever would a miserable insect like Subaru, who had pissed himself with fear earlier, be able to kill him. Without wasting any time, Sawatari activated her Red Rose ability, trying to burn Subaru alive. A giant explosion hit him straight on. However, to everyone's surprise, Subaru came out practically in one piece, feeling only a slight heat on his body. He thought he was going to die, but when he looked, he saw that his HP had only dropped to 121. Subaru realized that if he was hit a few more times, it would really get dangerous. Meanwhile, Sawatari, completely indignant, shouted at him, asking if he was kidding. He said that the Red Rose had enough power to destroy a car, and yet Subaru held on. The other bully, terrified, asked if they shouldn't run away. The door Subaru opened was stronger than gold, but even so, Sawatari insisted that they shouldn't. She said that while Subaru was still at level 1, they had to defeat him right there, before he became a real monster. As they argued, Subaru realized the danger. He thought it might be better to run away, but before he could react, he was caught by the web ability. Gray threads stuck to his body, and he realized that it wouldn't be easy to get rid of them. Sawatari took advantage of the gap and charged at him with her katana. Subaru was desperate. He thought this was terrible. He needed a skill, anything, to defend himself. But there was a problem. He didn't know how to use a skill. It was at that very moment that blood began to flow, but to his surprise, it wasn't his blood. From Subaru's own skin came blades made of blood, which not only blocked Sawatari's blow, but also hit him square in the head and chest. This was Vanquish's ability, the blood mold, which had activated on its own to protect its bearer. And Subaru, still in shock, could only wonder what the hell was Vanquish doing there. At that moment, Vanquish, observing everything, commented that those guys were really very boring. So just this once, he decided to explain to Subaru how his power worked. He said that, with the blood mold, he could manipulate the state of his own blood for up to 10 seconds. The sword that defended him just now, for example, was precisely a manifestation of this. To use the power, all he had to do was imagine. The rest depended on creativity. As soon as Sawatari was hit by the blades, the webs holding Subaru immediately broke. Vanquish then advised Subaru to feed the anger he felt. At that moment, he was almost hit in the eye by Sawatari's blade, but managed to narrowly dodge it. Only, unlike before, they were no longer calling him an insect but a creature. But a monstrous creature. Subaru, unable to understand, asked why he still insisted on attacking him. Even in that deplorable state, Sawatari, completely overcome with fury, replied that he had lost his own door because of him, and that, in addition, Kunisaki had died. So now Subaru had to die. He said he was a murderer, but Subaru fought back, pointing out that they had tried to kill him first. Only Sawatari, completely blinded by rage, said that it would have been better if Subaru had died inside that door. He said that no one would miss him because no one needed him. Subaru then closed his eyes and reflected. In a way, it seemed true. But following Vanquish's advice, he decided to feed his anger. He opened his eyes, filled himself with hatred, and told himself that they were all selfish bastards. At that moment, he concentrated his rainbow power, accumulating an absurd amount of energy in his fist. Even though he was facing a blade that could kill him, he simply ignored it, easily broke the sword in half, and landed a devastating punch right in Sawatari's face. The impact was so absurd that Sawatari bounced off the walls like a rubber ball. When he finally fell to the ground, he was practically dead. Subaru, panting, completely possessed by his own rage, looked at the destroyed body. The other bully, in shock, asked if that had really happened with a single blow. Desperate, he tried to use his web to protect himself, but in reality, he was just grabbing Sawatari's body to escape. Subaru stared and wondered if he had really escaped. Meanwhile, the other boy, running with the body on his back, was still wondering what the hell had just happened. He couldn't understand how someone at level 1 had defeated Sawatari with just one punch. He wondered what monster that madman had gotten that power from. Meanwhile, Subaru stared at the entire destroyed shed, with blood splattered all over it, a body practically broken in half, and wondered what he should do now. He told himself he'd won, but what was he supposed to do with all that mess? He had no idea how to deal with it. The next morning, the police arrived at the scene and were completely horrified. Analyzing the body, they commented that such a precise and clean cut, which broke a person in half, was definitely not made by a human being. Perhaps it was the work of some creature from the depths. But at that moment, someone appeared on the scene. It was none other than Hirosaka Renji. He told the policeman not to worry, as he had already checked the surroundings and there was no sign of any creature nearby. However, when one of the policemen approached with the victim's card, he realized that this guy was Kunisaki Shotoru, a bronze rank player. Next to the card, there was also his player registration card. Hirosaka, analyzing the situation, thought that if someone managed to break a bronze rank player in half, then the culprit was at least as powerful as a silver rank player. His heart was racing. In fact, technically, it wasn't even his heart, but the heart of Ludwig, the owner of his door. He took a deep breath and said that it didn't matter. They would find the culprit as soon as possible. After all, this was no time for the players to be fighting among themselves. Everyone's duty was to destroy as many doors as possible before that abomination called the celestial clock reached 0. And as he spoke, the seconds were already ticking away. Soon, complete destruction would come to this world. Meanwhile, elsewhere at Taiga's house, he looked at his watch and wondered if Subaru hadn't returned by now. It was already morning. He thought it was strange and realized that he hadn't even read his messages. That's when he opened his cell phone and saw a news item. A copper-ranked player had been found dead in Tokyo. Looking at the scene, Taiga was shocked. He recognized that the dead guy was one of those who had been bullying Subaru. He reflected and wondered if, by chance, Subaru had actually become a player, and if so, whether he had anything to do with it. Meanwhile, in the city of Shinagawa, at the Japan Gamers Federation headquarters, a huge building responsible for organizing the gamers and controlling the portals, Subaru observed everything around him, trying to understand if all those people around him were really gamers like him. After everything, Subaru went to the new member registration area, where he met a super cute, very attentive and polite receptionist. She asked if he wanted to register, and Subaru said yes. He thought that in Japan, it is illegal for any non-member to enter portals, and that it is only possible to level up within them, so he urgently needed to become a member. He also thought about what happened yesterday, which basically ended in a murder. He realized that investigating a player's death was also another player's job, and if the culprit was someone very strong, like a gold-ranked player, the chances of facing him would be enormous. And if it's Taiga, he's going to die. So until then, you need to complete as many portals as possible, get stronger, and prepare. Meanwhile, the receptionist began to explain the general rules. She said there were 3 things he needed to know. The first was that each portal he completed made him level up. The second was that the more stars the portal had, the harder it would be. And the third that, if he destroyed a portal, he could exchange the stars for money. At that moment, Subaru realized that he had a star in his pocket. He asked if he could change it. He thought that it had probably fallen out of Sawatari's pocket yesterday. He looked at it and realized that it was completely smooth. So even though he felt a bit bad, he decided that he would borrow this money from the dead man. The receptionist, however, asked whose star it was. Subaru quickly replied that it was from a portal that appeared in front of him, shortly after he became a player, and which he managed to complete. Only at that point she explained that a non-member entering a portal without registering could be sentenced to up to 5 years in prison or pay a fine of up to 1 million. Subaru froze. He thought he had made a bad mistake. He had no idea that the punishment was so heavy, and he was desperate, wondering what he would do now. Meanwhile, at the police station, Ariaki Taiga arrived. The doorman was surprised and asked why he was honored to be there. Taiga replied that he was there because of the murder case that happened yesterday, and that he wanted to know if the witness and the evidence were there, because he needed to confirm something small. Later, Subaru received the news that his account was now over 100,000 yen. In the end, he managed to exchange the star for cash. Normally, this would be considered a very serious crime, but the receptionist let it slide just this once. Subaru thought it was a very close call. Still, he thought, if a player wins all this with a single star, then maybe this world isn't so bad after all. He remembered his old dream, which kept returning to his mind, but he knew that now, in order to achieve it, he would have to risk his own life. He decided he needed to find a portal, but first he looked around. He saw a clothes store, a barber shop, and thought, why not? He was all washed up, really. He was very well looked after in both places, spent a lot of money, and left feeling like a new man, with new hair and new clothes. Later, sitting in a coffee shop, Subaru reflected on how incredible it all was. Not only had he managed to buy his own clothes, but he had also been to a barber for the first time in his life. And what's more, he was also drinking caramel makeup for the first time. She thought it was simply wonderful. He got emotional, realizing that it was the first time he had actually experienced true freedom. All his life he had been imprisoned by something, or someone. He thought that as soon as he'd finished drinking that, he'd look for a portal, and once he'd closed a portal, he'd go back there for another macchiato because now he was officially a player. However, at that very moment, on the other side of the cafe window, Taiga appeared, calling him a fucking insect. Subaru, in shock, wondered if they had already found him. He immediately thought he had to get out of there. But Taiga, without even thinking twice, broke through the glass, grabbed Subaru, and threw him so hard that he went flying, hitting several cars on the way, until he crashed to the ground. Halfway there, he realized that he was about to run over a mother and child. He quickly activated his blood mold ability, creating blades that stuck to the surrounding cars to reduce his speed and prevent him from hitting them. He managed to save them in time, and even though he was hurt, he shouted for them to get away as quickly as possible. Looking at it, Subaru could only think that it was shit. That, without a doubt, was the worst situation he could have been in. Taiga, looking at him on the ground, simply couldn't believe that this insect had actually become a player. Subaru, even though he was scared to death, thought that even though he was facing a gold-rank player, and worse, Ariaki Taiga, he still had to do it. After all, now he had power too. While all this was going on the street, traffic was at a complete standstill, with a huge traffic jam. People, unable to understand anything, began to wonder what was going on. A woman in traffic asked a man why everything was at a standstill. The old man, terrified, replied that it was because Ariaki Taiga had gone mad and that she should get out of the car and run away, because everything there was going to be completely destroyed because of him. At that moment, the two of them were staring at each other. Subaru mentally wondered how Taiga knew where he was. Taiga just replied that he wasn't going to say. He would have to find out for himself. Even though he tried to hit Subaru with a punch, he managed to dodge. Subaru thought that perhaps his cell phone was being tracked and that it was a mistake to have called to confirm payment. But Taiga said that it made no difference, because he would never find out. He would die right there. Then Taiga activated his golden arm, and Subaru realized how dangerous it was. Staying focused, Subaru mentally asked Vanquish if he could at least give him a hint. Vanquish explained that blood mold was a skill that transferred magical power to one's own blood, allowing one to manipulate it freely. But he warned that if Subaru abused this ability, his blood would quickly run out. Even so, Subaru didn't care. His priority was to survive, and that was the only thing he needed to focus on at the moment. There was Ariake Subaru, level 1, with 132 life, 119 mana, 36 strength, 29 defense, 36 agility, 31 dexterity, and 35 luck against Ariake Taiga, level 23, a golden knight with 562 life, 220 mana, 53 strength, 122 defense, 120 agility, 128 dexterity, and 101 luck. Taiga announced that he was going to finish him off right there and used his golden impact, creating a huge explosion where Subaru was standing. But to his surprise, Subaru managed to dodge it using threads of blood. He realized that he was imitating that other guy's ability and didn't even know exactly how, but he had managed to activate the blood mold. Even so, Taiga was already behind him, saying that he was too slow. When he tried to land another punch, Subaru drew another thread of blood and managed to change his trajectory in the air, narrowly dodging it. Even so, he knew that if he was hit by such a blow, he would die on the spot. Taiga began to wonder if Subaru's ability only consisted of pulling wires with his hands, if he could also move freely or grab things. But he said that was pathetic because a single blow was all it took to kill Subaru. At that moment, Subaru stopped. A mist of blood appeared around him. Taiga was surprised, thinking he was about to use another skill. Taking advantage of this gap, Subaru remembered Vanquish's teachings and knew he needed to stimulate his own hatred. So he went on the attack. But to his dismay, when he hit Taiga, it was he who felt the pain. The same attack that had defeated Sawatari like it was nothing, didn't even scratch Taiga and even damaged Subaru in the process. Shortly afterwards, Taiga landed a powerful blow to Subaru's chest, causing blood to gush out. His life, which had been at 109, began to drop rapidly due to the bleeding down to 12. Taiga then declared that he could no longer run away. But at that moment, several darts of blood appeared around him. Taiga realized that Subaru still had some cards up his sleeve and wondered what he was planning to do. Subaru realized that the more injured he was, the stronger he became. Blood was his power. Blood was his power. He then transformed all his blood into a dense mist and trapped Taiga inside it, firing several darts of blood at the same time. He believed that this was the most resistant blood he could create at that moment. But Taiga was still smiling. He said that he had already warned Subaru that he was nothing but garbage. He hadn't suffered a scratch. Subaru realized that Taiga had everything: speed, power, defense. He was on another level, literally after all. He was level 23. Even though he was on the verge of death and had become a gambler, Subaru realized that, no matter how many skills he used, he would never be stronger than Taiga at that moment. Meanwhile, Taiga thought that the ability to transform blood into various forms had very high applicability. He knew that if he let Subaru level up, it would be a big problem in the future. So he decided that he needed to finish him off immediately before that happened. Taiga then activated Golden Impact again to end it all at once. When the blow hit, it seemed that everything was over. But surprisingly, Subaru was still alive. He realized that speed, strength, and dexterity hadn't worked. His life was now at 5, and he had only survived because he had used something that felt soft and sticky at the same time to protect himself. Taiga was confused, wondering what the hell that was. It looked like a punching bag or a tire or something. He realized that the thing had absorbed all the impact, working like an airbag. What's more, it was stuck to his golden arm, like a gum that wouldn't come off. Subaru realized that he had imagined exactly that, an unbreakable gum. And thanks to that, he managed to survive the fatal attack. At that critical moment, Subaru created several blood bubbles. He knew that the effect of the blood mold only lasted 10 seconds. But even if he had to spend all his mana, he would do anything to stop Taiga. He used all that blood to Taiga's body, who tried to break free using his strength but was unable to. He could even walk, but he was completely stiff and paralyzed. Even so, Taiga made it clear that Subaru shouldn't think he had won, but Subaru replied that he never thought about winning. His only goal from the start was to survive, and he believed he would succeed. So he spent all the mana he still had to cover Taiga's entire body, using the blood mold that only lasted 10 seconds, and escaped. During this time, he created a large mist of blood to ensure his escape. Taiga, furious, thought that the worm thought he could make a fool of him. He swore that Subaru would not escape, and promised that he would hunt him down to the end. But before he could do anything, someone came calling. It was none other than Hirosaka Renji. who, as he approached, asked what kind of mess Taiga was causing. And he wasn't alone. Along with him were Shikishima and two other players. Taiga said he didn't have time to explain and that he needed to get out of there. But he was immediately chained up by the others. They said he had gone too far. Taiga looked around and wondered if they had really called in 7 gold-ranked players just to stop him. Renji replied that they were restricting his movements, so he should keep quiet and listen to what they had to say. Later, when the sun was setting, Subaru was alone, all destroyed, with little life and almost no mana. Even so, at least he managed to escape. However, he realized that he couldn't even scratch Taiga, and if he met him again, he would surely lose. He looked at his clothes, which had just been bought, now all torn and destroyed. Her other purchases were still in the cafeteria. Still, he thought shopping was fun, but now he had to fight for his freedom. He never wanted to go back to that shitty life. So he decided that he would get stronger, no matter what. The next morning, in front of an otherworldly portal, a woman was arguing with a group. She said that she had already booked that portal and that all she had to do was check the website. But the group, known as the Grex team, replied that nobody cared about reservations and that she looked too weak so she could just leave the portal to them. She then asked if she really looked that weak and concluded that they definitely didn't know her. She said she would refresh their memory. That woman's name was Amamiya Sayaka.